So I've already introduced you with your extensive background. I told everybody you are now with the Center for Security Policy. You had been to us back in Lansing about a year and a half ago. You came in with Jim Simpson and a couple people from Michigan and talked to our group, and you were very kind to do that. And actually, when I was looking back in my emails, we had Skyped you in just about a year ago, too, which was back in February, I think, of last year. So this is kind of nice. We got you back again, so we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
But, yeah, through your expertise, and I know we talked about a few issues that we would like to reach out globally a little bit. And in the news lately has been the Iran nuke deal, which President Trump has kind of put on the back burner a little bit and not sure exactly what to do. Can you tell us a little bit about that deal and the involvement of H.R. McMaster and Rex Tillerson, if they have any involvement with that Iran nuke deal and which direction it might go?
Right. So the Iranian regime that took power in a jihad revolution in 1979 began its clandestine nuclear weapons program in about 1988 or so by reaching out to A.Q. Khan, the so-called father of the Pakistani bomb, who helped the Iranians to get started with their own program. That program remained clandestine, secret to the world, at least publicly, until 2002. Publicly, nobody knew they were doing this. They are a signatory, remain a signatory to this day, to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which obligates them to reveal to the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN monitoring agency for nuclear programs, to reveal to them all of their programs and research and development. Well, obviously they didn't do that. In that year, 2002, the Iranian opposition group, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, blew the lid off the program. They, through their group, their member group called the Mujahideen Khalq, or MEK, have an extensive clandestine spy network of their own inside of Iran. And they have penetrated Iran's nuclear weapons program. And they revealed to the world that this existed. So from that point onwards, the IAEA at least glommed on a little bit and knew that there was a program. That continued on and off for some time. The sites that had been revealed publicly were now blown, as it were. And the program itself went clandestine even further, and sometimes literally underground, under tunnels and bunkers and mountains. Now, 2009, along comes the Obama administration, which had, even before its inauguration, reached out to the supreme leader, Khamenei of Iran, to say, you're going to really like me and my administration. We're going to be great pals. I'm paraphrasing a little bit.
Right.
And then began the behind-the-scenes secret talks between the Obama administration and the Tehran regime. John Kerry became Secretary of State, and he led those talks. Eventually, the talks became more public, and it was acknowledged by both sides that they were reaching out to craft some kind of a deal that would be the capstone to President Obama's presidency. So the talks went on back and forth for a number of years. July 2015, they announced success, and they said they'd reached an agreement. That agreement, called the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, allowed Iran to keep its entire nuclear weapons infrastructure. They didn't have to give anything up. They were allowed to continue enriching uranium, which had been banned by the United Nations itself earlier. They were allowed to keep all of their centrifuges. These are those machines that spin up the uranium to enrich it. They were allowed to continue research and development on better, faster, more modern centrifuges. They were allowed to say which sites would be off limits for inspection by the IAEA. Let's see what else. And oh yes, by the way, the ballistic missile program, which is supposed to be the delivery system for a nuclear warhead, was not even included in the talks or the agreement. Completely off limits.
Claire, if I can just ask a question, and I'm sure some of us know this answer, just being lay people, where I'm getting a little bit of an echo, but no problem, is President Obama, you said President Obama even reached out before he was inaugurated. Why would, looking at it now, why would he make such an absurd deal with a terrorist country like Iran? What do you think that purpose was?
Well, I think the Obama administration came into office with an agenda that was to get the United States out of the Middle East. And then because the balance of power in the Middle East between Sunnis and Shiites, essentially, had already been busted by the previous president, George W. Bush, when he not only took out Saddam Hussein, who needed to go, but then dismantled and destroyed Saddam's Sunni army, which was the one and only blocking force that held the Shiites at bay in the Middle East. That was gone now. So Obama comes in and says, there's no balance of power left anyway. Let's us Americans get out of here, and we will have to have some way of reestablishing some sort of an order. So we'll help Iran to be the nuclear-powered hegemon of the region. And they're a big, powerful country with a lot of, military resources and a nuclear weapons program. And they're not saying this out loud, of course. I'm saying this.
Right.
And they will be the ones to keep order over all of these fractious Sunni countries and emirates and terror groups like Al Qaeda and others. I think that was the mentality.
Okay.
So he does this. And he goes ahead, and they reach this agreement in July of 2015. And it allows all those things I just said it allowed. And so, of course, Iran still has a clandestine nuclear weapons program. It didn't go away. They didn't dismantle it. It literally just went into hiding. And, of course, because the KGB itself of the Soviet Union then taught the Iranians how to do this, how to hide their overall weapons programs, biological and chemical too. So as the Trump administration came into office last year, 1 year ago now, President Trump had a different idea about how to deal with Iran. I don't know if he is aware of the extent of the Iranian clandestine nuclear weapons program or not. He doesn't have the best advisors around him. But encouraging to me is the knowledge that both Ambassador John Bolton and former CIA Director Jim Woolsey are both talking to him, that is, to President Trump. That's a good thing.
So just to restate that, Claire, John Bolton, who's everywhere, Breitbart, Fox News, gives excellent commentary, just like you're talking. So you believe he is talking to President Trump, even though he has no official capacity within the administration. He's got
no official position right now, but yes, it is certain that he is talking to the president. Now, we know that, for one thing, for a fact, because the day before, President Trump was obligated by a law passed by Congress with relation to the JCPOA, the nuke deal, that the president must recertify that deal every 90 days, or about every 3 months. And that date had gone by in the month of April 2017, had gone by again in the month of July 2017. Now we're in the month of October 2017, and President Trump was faced once again with that deadline, and he had made it public that he was not going to recertify, that Iran was in compliance again.
Right.
And we know that Ambassador Bolton spoke with the president by telephone the night before the president made his statement about not recertifying, because John Bolton told the public this on a news broadcast that the next night. I think it was on Fox News. So we know that. Now, not recertifying compliance does not end the deal. To end the deal, the president, who has the full authority to do this, by the way, nobody ever signed this thing. There's not one signature by any party on any page of the nuclear deal. It's never been signed, much less ratified by anybody, whether it be the Iranian Majlis, their parliament, or our Congress. It's never been ratified. It's not a treaty. It was deliberately not submitted to the Senate by Obama because he knew that they would not approve it as a treaty. So it genuinely, it has no validity except as an agreement between a bunch of parties who said, okay, yeah. So the president has the authority, number one, to back out of it at any time. And number two, he also has the authority, and Congress also has the authority, to impose sanctions that would, against Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure program, people, individuals, that would essentially, by reason of reimposing sanctions, by that would end U.S. Involvement in the deal. Now, the Europeans don't want to go along with this. They are salivating at all the deals they think they're going to get with Iran now that sanctions are lifted. And so they don't want to withdraw at all from this deal.
Deals as far as...
The U.S. can still withdraw.
Yeah. Deals
so we're waiting now for President Trump to make that final decision.
Okay.
Perhaps at the next deadline or between now and then, that he will back out of this deal, because it's kabuki dance. It's worthless. It means nothing. Has nothing to do with the reality on the ground. Iran is researching and probably building nuclear warheads right now underground, and using their what I call joint venture with North Korea to test them.
I mean, you being an expert in what you do, know all this. I guess maybe I heard one time, maybe I'm not sure, but I never knew that there was no signage of a treaty or no signatures anywhere.
Nope.
But yet, a lot of these people, I think we've got about 70 people or so here, 60 people. I'm sure a great majority, if not everybody sitting in this room, knows Iran wants to develop a nuclear weapon. But yet our government tends to look the other way, and you just said Europe is ready to jump all over these sanctions that'll be let go so they can make deals with Iran. And where's there the common sense anymore? Where's that plane load of cash that Obama sent to them? I mean,
well, here's the good point you bring up, Gary, actually, that plane load of cash. So you'll all remember that when, this is the other thing that wasn't included in the deal, 4 American hostages had been kept for quite a long time by the Iranians. And one of them was Pastor Saeed Abedini, Christian pastor. Another one was Jason Rezai, who was the former bureau chief for the Washington Post in Tehran, and 2 more, and I apologize for not remembering their names right off the top of my head. But they've been held for a long time, and not part of the deal, except all those secret side deals that we don't know about, reached behind the scenes, that the President Obama refused to share not only with the American people, but even with Congress. So who knows what's in those? We don't know. But in any case, the 4 hostages eventually were let go in January of 2016, but not before a plane, unmarked plane, landed in Tehran with pallets of shrink-wrapped Swiss francs and euros. They didn't use dollars because that would have been illegal. I mean, not that the rest of it wasn't, but
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And once that plane had landed with all that cash, $1.7 billion in the end, this shipment and other released funds, the hostages were let go and they could come home. But remember now, just between Christmas and New Year's, Christmas 2017 and this month, now January, the people in Iran rose up once again in protests all over the country. And one of the things that they were chanting, one of the things they were complaining about was, regime, mullahs, you have taken billions of dollars and spent them not on the people who are suffering from a very bad economic situation, but you spent that money to fund terrorist organizations, Islamic terror groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, and the Iraqi Shiite militias called Hashd-e-Shabi, and to prop up the brutal dictatorship of Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. And the people know this, and they were chanting this on the streets. And that's part of why they were so upset and were calling for the first time, unlike in 2009, calling for this regime to be wiped away, to be taken down, to be destroyed, to be replaced. That's really the first time we've seen so many of the Iranian people protesting to replace the regime, not just reform it somehow, but replace it. And that deal is part of it.
Has President Trump responded correctly to the Iranian Revolution by saying what he has, or should he do more?
Well, certainly many hope that he will do more, but I can tell you, because I was in contact through Instagram and Telegram and WhatsApp and all the social media with people inside and outside of Iran during the protests, that they were so much encouraged. They were so happy to have the outspoken support of the President of the United States, as well as, I will add, the Department of State and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who also made statements. We don't know exactly what went on behind the scenes, if anything, and clearly they're going to need a lot more help than public statements of support, but that was such an important thing for the people of Iran to hear that. You know, you're some 22-year-old kid wondering in the morning, you wake up and you know there are protests, whether you should go out and join them, knowing you could be shot at, arrested, tortured, killed, or not. And that kind of encouragement is the kind of thing that propels them. Oh, the President of America is with us. So the protests have died down now, yes, but things are not over, and we will see what the President of the United States will be doing as this moves forward.
So you're saying the Iranian people, you know, are disappointed in, well, maybe that's not the right word, in their government of not supporting the people.
They are thoroughly and completely done. They were chanting Marg bar dictator, meaning death to the dictator. Marg bar Khamenei, death to Khamenei, the supreme leader. This is what they were chanting by the thousands on the streets, night after night after day.
So their daily life, say like we've got middle class here in America, what would life be like in Iran of a middle class person? Do they have that, or is it the wealthy to the, yeah?
Well, I mean, they do, and certainly there are many major cities in Iran with modern, you know, urban infrastructure, everything you would expect of a modern city in the 21st century, yes. But the problem is their standard of living and prices and the corruption at all levels of the regime that makes that cost of living, I mean, just simply buying daily groceries, very difficult and getting more difficult as the prices rise.
Okay.
The sanctions have taken their toll. Other sanctions beyond sanctions on the nuclear program remain in effect. For example, sanctions on the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, for their support for terrorism. Those sanctions remain. And so there are effects of sanctions, but there are also effects of massive corruption. And the people know this. They see it. They see how the mullahs live. They know how they live. So yes, there's a middle class, and people are very well educated. Many have university degrees, and others are of what you would call the working class. You know, driving buses and taxis. Let's
Sure.
say.
Okay.
But for all of them, it's very difficult. And I would also say there's a difference between the urban Iranian citizen and that standard of living, and the standard of living out in the villages, which are not as modern at all, or you know, as you would not find as many people, you would say, of the middle class around the countryside. Mm-hmm. Oh, one more thing I'll mention, and that is that what people might not know. Iran has a very diverse population, but only about maybe half of it are actually Persian. The rest of the population of Iran is comprised of minorities, tribal and ethnic minorities like Azeris and Baluchis and Kurds and even Arabs down along the Persian Gulf. And those populations, which tend to be geographically around the periphery of Iran, if you can think of the map, resent greatly being dominated and ruled over by Persians in Tehran. And they joined this uprising in large numbers. So that's another indicator for you.
So even though the revolution has sort of died down as far as protesting in the streets, the support of the United States and President Trump is still going to carry a lot of weight with those people. So it might be an ebb and tide sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Remember, somebody pointed this out to me during the uprising, and that is that when the revolution against the Shah began back in the 1970s, it took a total of around 18 months of protests and demonstrations and backing and forthing before the Shah was overthrown.
Okay. And also
in the end, yeah. It did come down to military action, and I think that it will with this regime as well. They're not going to go without a fight because, I mean, where can they go, first of all?
Right.
You know, they have done so much wrong to the people that the people will be looking for revenge.
Mm-hmm. We mentioned this at our last Tea Party meeting. I may have even seen the tweet from you, and I suggest everybody follow Clare Lopez on Twitter. But is the young lady with a stick in her hand holding up her hijab that she took off, you know, which to me is she's fighting back against that Sharia adherent regime. What surprised me, I'll say surprised, is that nowhere in maybe Europe or the United States, and as you know, we've got a heavy Muslim population here in Michigan, that there weren't ladies in the streets of Dearborn of Iranian descent holding up their hijabs on a stick. And so do you think that's how big of a control Sharia has over women, that they're just afraid to do that, other than that brave lady and a couple other videos that I've seen?
Well, a couple things. Iran first, then the U.S. So what I heard, and I'm waiting to see if it's really true or not, is that during the protests, the regime announced that it would no longer enforce the hijab or the dress code rule for Iranian citizens, women, and I guess men too. They formally told even the men, you know, what kind of trousers, no blue jeans, what kind of haircuts they could have, whatever. It was said that they were not going to enforce that anymore. We'll see about that.
Yeah.
But to the United States, let's remember that here in the United States, as well as elsewhere in the very large Iranian diaspora community, people who fled Iran, especially around the time of the fall of the Shah and after, were fleeing this regime. They were trying to get away from the mullahs. And so Many of them are here in the United States in communities like in Southern California and other places. But they have, no allegiance to Sharia whatsoever, and want nothing to do with dress codes, including hijabs. But your point is still a good one, Gary, because there are a lot of other Muslim populations in the United States, including those born here,
right,
who are very much Sharia adherent. And they learn Islam in the home, in the madrasas, that's Islamic schools, in the mosques, here in America. And that's why you sometimes often see, a greater Sharia adherence and devotion to the faith, to Islam. Actually, I shouldn't say faith. Somebody pointed this out to me today. Islam is not a faith because it doesn't require belief. It only requires submission. But in any case, they learn the tenets of Islam in the home, the madrasa, the mosque. And you often find greater devotion or commitment in the second and third generation in America than in the first generation. But among the Iranians, I would say the majority of those who came here to escape all that. And so they don't have hijabs to take off because they took them off a long time ago. But among the Sunnis and the others here, you are not going to find any support, for those who are trying to break away from Sharia, whether there or here. Okay,
all right. Yeah, if we can, not sure if this is your expertise, but I'm sure, President Trump is facing this wave of opposition. And I know at the South Carolina Tea Party, you talked about the red-green axis. The communist and the Islam not getting together, but they've got the same goal, to take down the President of the United States. Now we've got the investigation of the FBI and the FISA and the memo, release the memo. Can you give us, maybe if you have a little bit of insight there that maybe not being reported on Fox News or Breitbart about the memo? Or where's this, do our politicians have the courage to see it all the way through and put people in jail?
Well, I think that this administration at the top does have that determination. President Trump does. Attorney General Jeff Sessions does. I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than we know. Certainly Devin Nunes, the committee chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the HPSI as we call it, is just a profile in courage. And so, yes, what's becoming uncovered now was never meant to be public. The other side thought for sure that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election, and they thought that everything they were doing, all the criminality, all the breaking of the laws, was never going to come to light because she'd be president and everything would be good. Well, she didn't win. And so gradually, these things are coming to light. Yeah, absolutely.
If Hillary would have won, I'm sorry to interrupt you, keep your thought. If Hillary would have won, would you have just packed it in and bought a condo in Tahiti someplace? And
with what savings account?
Yeah, there you go, yeah. Yeah, look at all our 401ks, huh? How about that? Huh?
Yeah. But so I really want to give a tip of the hat, a call out to some of the real heroes of what's going on right now. And I've already mentioned the president, Jeff Sessions, Devin Nunes at the HPSI. I also want to talk about some of the investigative journalists who just deserve absolute Pulitzer Prizes for what they've done. Sarah Carter, top of that list. John Solomon also. The team at Fox News. Certainly Sean Hannity, who's got this featured on his show every night about 9 o'clock Eastern time, that is. And then, others who have kept it alive in the media, in the press. Breitbart, certainly, yes. So, stay tuned to those places, whether online, on TV, or whatever. But here's what's coming to light. So, in 2016, as the election campaigning is ongoing, there was a team, and I mean, even call it a cabal, inside the highest levels. This is not rank and file. This is not about the professionals who do their duty every day, day in and day out. This is a small cabal at the top of the FBI and the top of the Department of Justice. This is the Obama administration, who decided that as Donald Trump began to emerge, first as the, he won the primaries, and then as the candidate, that this was just a nightmare they could not allow to happen. They could not even take a chance that he would win the presidency. And so you remember hearing about Peter Strzok, this FBI agent, having an extramarital affair with Lisa Page inside the FBI, who was sending text messages back and forth and said, we got to have an insurance policy just in case Trump wins. So the insurance policy was like this. First of all, what they were doing was using NSA, National Security Agency, and its collection of wiretaps illegally. They were using them in an illegal way. Not NSA wasn't, but they were. And then figures in the administration were what they call unmasking the names of Americans that they should not have been even knowing the names or unmasking them, and then sharing those around the intelligence community, which is comprised of 17 agencies, by the way. And with this information, they hoped that they could begin to block Trump's rise. Well, another hero in this whole story is retired Admiral Mike Rogers, who is the director of NSA. When he found out that this was going on, he put a stop to it. Well, then they needed another way to go after this. So what they were doing then is abusing the FISA court process. So FISA, F-I-S-A, stands for Foreign Intelligence Security Act, and it is a law. That's why it's called an act that delineates exactly how our national security agencies can surveil through wiretaps and other means foreign, hostile agents and intelligence services. So there was a court of 11, I think it's 11, no, wait a minute, I'm sorry, 7. Yeah, 7 judges appointed by the Supreme Court, the chief of the Supreme Court. That would be John Roberts. Those 7 are report to him. They are appointed by him and report to him. FISA court judges. So when the FBI or some other intelligence agency wants to begin surveillance on, remember, hostile foreign intelligence operative or operation, they have to take their evidence to the FISA court, and then the FISA court grants or does not grant permission for them to do the surveillance, the wiretapping, and so forth. That's how it's supposed to work. Well, the Obama administration went and got evidence that was not, to put it kindly, not well vetted. They collaborated with the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee to hire a law firm, which in turn hired a company called Fusion GPS, which in turn hired a retired former intelligence operative from Britain named Christopher Steele, who then went to Russia to get and dig up dirt on President, well, I'm sorry, it wasn't President, but candidate Trump at the time, and later on President-elect Trump at the time, to use, which in an effort to either derail his candidacy or after he was elected, then to try to get him out of office. This is criminal. In every step of the way, it's criminal. To present false evidence that you know is false or has not been vetted to present that kind of evidence, which is what it looks like the FBI did with what was collected by Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, paying money to Russian sources to put this garbage into the so-called dossier. Then the FBI massages, dresses up the dossier, and takes that to the FISA court to ask for permission to surveil Trump and his team. Those are felonies. Every single bit of it is a felony. But the FISA court, apparently, I don't know, but not knowing that the material in the dossier was not only not valid, vetted, corroborated, or anything else, but wasn't even finished intelligence, but rather, as Christopher Steele later said, oh, just raw material. But in any case, the FISA court granted the permission for the surveillance.
Jeez.
And at that point, then, they had a new way, the Hillary Clinton team, because this is all a Clinton operation, had another way to go after Donald Trump, which they did. Now, again, here is Mike Rogers, the hero. As we are now in the transition area, November of last year, 2017, he's won the election. President Trump is President-elect Trump is in Trump Tower, organizing his transition. Mike Rogers, NSA's Mike Rogers, goes to Trump Tower one day in November and apparently says, President Trump, you're being wiretapped. You're being surveilled. The very next day, Trump took his transition team and moved them out of Trump Tower to another location where they continued the transition process. So again, a lot of courage and a lot of praise goes to Mike Rogers for that.
Did we ever hear that in the news, Claire? I don't.
Yes, this is all in the news. This is all on the.
I mean, of Rogers saying that to Trump.
Yes, it's all there.
Yeah.
Everything I'm telling you is straight off the internet.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't remember
media sources that I trust or have corroborated myself.
Yeah. Because I remember. No, I'm not questioning you, but I'm just because I remember President Trump saying he's being wiretapped, and everybody said you're crazy. There's another thing why we shouldn't elect him. But I never.
That is because Mike Rogers told him.
Okay, maybe I did hear it, but just didn't connect the dot. Yeah.
So now, and I left out one other group that I really need to mention, and they were at the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Tea Party Coalition convention this past weekend with me too, and that is Judicial Watch. Yeah. What a group of heroes those guys are. Tom Fitton spoke at the Myrtle Beach convention, but that team is just doing such fantastic work. And what they do, as you probably know, is submit FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, to pry out of the government documents they don't want released. And then when they refuse to give them up, Judicial Watch goes to court. And they've been winning a lot. And they get the documents released that way. And that's how we know a great deal of what I just told you and more, because of Judicial Watch as well as these intrepid, investigative reporters.
So when all this, and last question, then we'll open it up to our group here. So all of this is coming to a peak. I even heard Sean Hannity on the way over to the meeting this afternoon is saying more information's coming out. The memo is going to be released, it looks like. We're going to get to know what's in it. Even though Peter Schiff says we might not understand it, which is baloney, But Adam Schiff. I'm sorry. California. Yeah. So the Clintons are heavily involved. We're a now society. I want things to happen now, and I want who's ever responsible for all this, especially the Clintons, in jail now. But is it going to take years from now to all this happen, 2, 3, 4 years? Or
it could.
Yeah, it could.
It really could. Patience.
Yeah.
The good guys are in the White House. The good guys now head up this administration.
Yeah.
There is a process, and because the process of corruption evolved over so many years, took so many years to get to the point that it is now. It's going to take some time to unravel and reverse all of that. Yeah. But I think the good news is that there are an awful lot of good people working so hard on this. They're not going to let it go. And they are determined that those responsible will be held accountable legally in a court of law.
Well, I'm happy that, I'm very happy that people like you and the Center for Security Policy are following this. I check your website often enough to see what's happening. I also go to Breitbart. And then there's a website called The Conservative Treehouse that's been following this issue. But when I hear about all these names and this and that, and my head's ready to explode with the duct tape.
I know.
Does Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, do they have any control over these investigations, or do they have to have courage too?
Well, the investigations are being conducted primarily out of the House of Representatives. So there, Speaker Ryan does have responsibility and involvement. As I said, Devin Nunes is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. There are other committees that are also pursuing investigations, and it is because of those committees' demands for documents that the report came to the House, to Congress, about everything I was just telling you. And then from that larger report, it was distilled down to the 4-page memo that we're all demanding be released now.
Yeah.
The 4-page memo has been read by, what did I see, well over 100 or 200 members of the House. I guess mostly Republicans. Democrats are suffering from a very curious lack of curiosity. But in any case, the memo is now probably, hopefully, going to be released more widely. It's not classified. The information upon which it draws, some of that is classified. So that bigger set of documents would not be released. But the 4-page memo is the thing we're after. So just keep your eye on that. That should be able to be released, and it would be simply a decision by the Intelligence Committee, maybe the broader House, but the Intelligence Committee, as I understand it, has the authority to decide to release that.
Okay. Yeah, let us keep you for about another 10 minutes, and I'm going to open it up for questions, and then we'll let you go. Okay, I'm going to stand up here, Claire, and I'm going to give them a microphone, so see if you can hear them.
Okay.
We're coming to dinner. Wally.
Jim Tokarz.
Testing. What then are we, after knowing all this information, what then are we to think of the Mueller investigation and the Russian collusion? Because if I got my facts straight, the Russian collusion conspiracy was something that Hillary Clinton formulated after she lost the election as a distraction. And at the time we said distraction from what? Maybe now we're finding out what she wanted to distract the American people from. So where are we going with all this now? Where is Mueller heading? What's going to be his end result out of all this information we're now gathering?
Gary, could you please repeat or summarize the question for me? The audio wasn't so good.
I'm sorry. The Mueller investigation of Trump collusion with Russia. Dead issue? Hillary's got no claim to that?
Oh, I see. Well, obviously there was no collusion to influence the 2016 election between the Donald Trump campaign team and the Russians. It just simply doesn't exist, never did. So what Mueller has been on is kind of a trolling expedition, looking for something, anything else that he can dig into. But given that the premise for the establishment of the special counsel, Robert Mueller, was based upon the FBI, then FBI Director Comey's, what can we say, not not necessarily illegal, but certainly his wrong
yeah.
decision to take information and hand it to a friend of his, who then gave it to the media to push publicly in the media for the establishment of a special counsel. So in other words, the whole premise of the special counsel is undermined by official corruption. Yep. The very reason for its existence has no basis. It should be disbanded. I don't know that it will be, or how soon it will be, but it should be.
Okay, let's take a couple more for you. Anybody else have a question? I've got some that were handed to me. Yes, sir, way in the back. And I'll relay the message to Claire.
Listening to John McCullough earlier today, he made mention, because there's been some mention of this 4-page document.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uninterpretable, ununderstandable, don't understand it. However, McCullough made a statement that there's another 99-page document that this 4-page summary is based on.
Right.
And another talk show host supposedly was going to release that soon. Do you have any idea what he's talking about?
Yeah. Well, I think Claire might have mentioned it. Is yeah, I'll, you talked about the 4-page memo, which was part of a bigger group of vast or many pages of information. Yeah. Yeah, a larger set of documents, because that was classified information, correct? So just
as I understand it, yes.
Yeah. So just the 4 pages is unclassified. The American public should be able to see that. But the gentleman was asking about those additional documents. Will we ever be able to see those?
No.
That's classified.
They are classified and probably will remain so. But I think that the 4-page memo will give a pretty good picture of what was going on. And those congressional members that already have read the 4-page memo, many of them have spoken out and let us know how appalled they were and how important it is that the memo be released so the American people can see what was done too. Not just unethical, which is what Comey did.
Yeah.
Well, who knows what else, but illegal. The misuse and the deliberate misuse, the deliberate falsification of documents provided to the FISA court in particular is what apparently is in this memo, and that needs to come out.
Yes, sir.
Ask her why those other documents are classified.
Why are those documents classified? What information would be in there?
Because they are products of the intelligence community.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That's correct.
Yes, Janice.
The media is now telling us that ISIS has been destroyed. I suspect that's to try to placate us. Now, when Claire was in Lansing, she gave us a timeline of the global Islamic movement. What is the state or the stage of the worldwide caliphate? Are we making any progress in stopping it?
Okay, in the news, Claire, they're claiming that ISIS has been just about destroyed. But still the Caliphate Islamic movement, especially we can see in Europe, is on the move. Where are we at against radical Islam and the Caliphate and Sharia being spread throughout the world?
So the first thing I would say is there's no such thing as radical Islam. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, Islam.
There's no such thing as extremist Islam. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as Islamism or Islamist, extremist, radicalist. That doesn't exist. It's Islam.
Thank you.
Islam.
Yeah, thank you for
one
correcting
Islam,
me.
one Sharia, one Quran. And what we see with the Islamic State, by the way, there's no ISIS either, because the Islamic State in Iraq and Al Sham, ISIS, changed its name to the Islamic State more than 3.5 years ago. So it's been Islamic State ever since. And it has lost something like 98% of the territory over there in the Middle East it had originally overrun and conquered. And that's a good thing. What's not such a good thing is that in many places where the Islamic State was pushed out, those that came in behind and took over that territory are every bit as much jihadis as the Islamic State, except that they're Shiites instead of Sunnis. We've defeated the Islamic State, maybe, but you know, we've just cleared the decks for the other jihadis, which are Shiites. That's a whole other problem. So, but to the broader question, which is a global Islamic movement, and by the way, that's what they call it, the Islamic movement. That's their word. That's their term for it. I didn't make that up. They call themselves the Islamic movement. It is global. It is the obligation of every single Muslim to work to establish an Islamic state across the globe under rule of Sharia, of Islamic law. That is the obligation of every single Muslim on earth. Now, do they all meet their obligation? Thank goodness, no, they don't. But enough do that something will take the place of the Islamic State. And if you'll recall, of course, Islamic State itself is only the latest in a whole line of different group names. Before it, as I said, was Islamic State in Iraq and Al-Sham. Before that, it was Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Before that, it was Tawhid in the Land of the Two Rivers. You can go back and back and back, and there's always some other name, but it keeps reforming. The other thing is that even though defeated, the Islamic State fighters are not all dead. A lot of them are, and some will go back to whatever places they came from, different countries around the world. But there are a whole bunch who are not dead, and they're still in the Middle East. They're still there. They will reform. They will either join another group like Al-Qaeda, which goes under the name Hayat Tahrir al-Sham right now in that part of the world. They'll join up with that group. These groups, by the way, are constantly morphing and changing, and membership comes and goes and flows. So don't even pay so much attention to the name of the week. It's like flavor of the week at Baskin-Robbins.
Okay.
What is true and what the questioner, is getting at, she's absolutely right that Islam will rise again. The obligation to establish a caliphate drives many who are faithful to Islam, and they will reform and they will regroup, and there will be another name. So I'm hoping that the Trump administration understands some of this and has some advisors someplace that are telling them about this, because defeating one group with one name this week is not going to do it.
Okay, and I'm going to end with, I've got about 4 more questions, so we're not going to keep you long, though. I just want you to give me some. I think these will be quick, easy answers for you. So just 1 or 2 sentences, and then we'll let you go. Is President Trump going to be impeached?
It depends on whether the Republicans can hold the House of Representatives this coming November. Okay. Everything depends on that. Now, impeachment, of course, does not mean anything. It's a political statement. It means nothing as far as him continuing to be president. The Senate, with a 2/3 vote of 67 votes, would have to vote to remove him from the presidency, and that's not going to happen.
Okay.
But impeachment, they will try for that if the Republicans lose control of the House in November.
Okay. What about Antifa and Black Lives Matter? Do you believe some of those?
The briefing.
Yeah, that's right. But just, do you think some of those are paid protesters?
Yes, we know that they're paid protesters because we found the ads posted on Craigslist and the amounts of money they were offering them.
Okay.
So yes, of course they are paid, some of them at least. But the thing you need to know is that there is an alliance or an axis, if you will, and it's comprised of the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood, which is gathered together under an umbrella group called the U.S. CMO, United States Council of Muslim Organizations, a group of groups, if you will. CARE, ICNA, MPAC, and others are part of that.
Yeah.
The second element, Black Lives Matter movement, and the third element, what I call Saul Alinsky type acolytes or anarchists, meaning Revolutionary Communist Party USA, Refuse Fascism, and so many more,
Right.
you know, anarchists on the street. They are working together, and they are funded by the same major donors: George Soros, Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Plowshares Foundation, Tides Foundation, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, 2 more questions. H.R. McMaster, you mentioned John Bolton. Should John Bolton take H.R. McMaster's job?
Well, we would certainly love to see the ambassador in some position in the administration. The 1-year mark has just passed for this administration since inauguration, and we're waiting to see who might leave and who might come, but we certainly hope that Ambassador Bolton takes one of the positions now occupied by somebody else in this administration.
Okay. And the last question for you, when is Clare Lopez going to work for the Trump administration?
I'm still waiting for that phone call.
All right. Well, if we have any influence, we'll make sure to look your way.